Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar uh, by North South Foundation. This is going to be one of the very interesting one, particularly for the high school kids to manage their time, which is always a is issue with them. Uh, we have a lot of people registered, so hopefully we'll have a good participation. Uh, I'll just start off with one of the polls, and then we can answer them while I'm talking. We have about 4 or 5 polls, so we will start doing the polls before we start. The presenters have shared a couple of books that can be useful to read for this topic. I've put that in handout section. You can download and see the names of the books, and hope we are all going to have a great session. At this time, I'm going to invite Srivital Chopra, who is Executive Committee Member of North South Foundation, to talk a little bit about the webinar and the presenters. Thank you for coming. Srivital, please take over.
Okay. Thank you, Desi. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I have the privilege of introducing the speakers today. So I would start with Dr. Balu Natarajan, MD. Dr. Balu Natarajan is a board member of the North South Foundation, spearheading our COVID-19 response team and making a difference in our community at this trying time. He is also fully engaged in shaping our organization for the future. Dr. Natarajan had the distinction of becoming the first Indian American to claim Scripps Spelling Bee National Championship in 1985, thereby leading the way for many youngsters to aspire and achieve this honor in the years to come. He was the pronouncer of the first North-South National Spelling Bee in 1993. Dr. Natarajan is board certified in internal medicine, sports medicine, and hospice and palliative medicine. He is Chief Medical Officer of Seasons Hospice and Palliative Care, the largest privately held organization in the country, which supports terminally ill patients and their families. He also serves on the board of the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization, the Swami Ayyappa Temple in Plainfield, Illinois, the Hospice Medical Director Certification Board, and is also on advisory council of the Hindu American Foundation. And now to our second speaker, Kavya Shivshankar. Kavya is a medical student at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia. She earned her bachelor's degree in neuroscience at Columbia University in the city of New York in 2017. Kavya has been involved with North South Foundation since 2002, when she began competing in educational contests at her local Kansas City chapter. Through participating in North South, Kavya fostered her passion for spelling and language and gained the tools that paved the way for her success at the Scripps National Spelling Bee, where she was crowned champion in 2009. Kavya continues to be involved with North South as a volunteer and joined the board in 2019. So, as you can see, today both the speakers are the former champions and also the board members. There are multiple things they are doing. So to this, I would like to add a few more personal comments about the speakers. As a fellow board member, I have an opportunity to observe both of them very closely for the past few years. And one big thing I notice is their involvement is 100%. They excel in everything they do. And as you could see, they do a lot. And COVID-19 situation was the latest example where Dr. Balu and Kavya, their involvement is awesome. And Dr. Balu is actually shaping the responses from the day one. This, you have to see that with what he has to do with his hospice care, palliative care, being the chief medical officer. Personally, I was always amazed at how both of them could involve so much and also excel. That's when prompted, maybe they should share their personal experiences and help a lot others on time management. The questions I typically have for them is, how could they do this? Where do they find time for all of this? And what can the teens in particular, and also all adults, learn from their experiences? I believe today our speakers are a perfect combination. One, a practicing professional for many, many years, and the other one would be professional soon. So now, I thank both the speakers for the time. And now over to Dr. Balu Natarajan, and Kavya. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your
Thank
kind
you.
words.
Yeah, thank you. And then I will go through some of the questions quickly. Please respond. I put on the second question as how long you are spending per day on studying and academic activities. Please respond as fast as possible. I'm moving on to the next question. This time we are going to ask you how many hours you spend on an average on non-academic indoor pursuits like learning, music, or other cultural activities. Moving on to the next question. How many hours you spend on an average on other online activities other than academic and non-academic? And finally, I'm moving on to the last question. How many hours on an average you spend for outdoor activities, playing, walking, running, jogging? Thank you, everybody. We have the polls completed. I hope you all answered frankly and openly, and your parents are not looking on your shoulders in the answers. But let me summarize what we got. For the first question about how much you are spending time on social media, 40% of you said 0 to 2 hours, and about 38% said 2 to 4 hours. They also had 3% said more than 8 hours. For the second question about academic thing, 40% of you said 2 to 4 hours, and 0 to 2 hours is 25%, and 4 to 6 hours is 28%. For the third question for non-academic music and stuff, 75% said 0 to 2 hours, and 20% said 2 to 4 hours. And for the other, the question about online, 50% of you said 0 to 2 hours, and 30% of you said 2 to 4 hours. And then the final question is about outdoor activities. 80% of you said 0 to 2 hours, and about 20% of you said 2 to 4 hours. That's how the spread of the audience today. So take it over, Dr. Paul.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. And can you see my screen fully? Do I need to shrink the GoToWebinar tab?
We can see you as well as the presentation. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. So Kavya, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
All right. Very good. We have a lot to share with about 350 people, and it seems like we may get some more joining. So a couple of ground rules. We are hoping that this will be interactive. So we will be asking Daisy to help us because we will ask some questions. We will expect some responses. I think if our audience is teens and tweens, the last thing they want is to be talked to for an hour. So ground rule number one is if we try to make it interactive, then please help us out so that it is not a unidirectional talk. The second ground rule is we're not going to talk for that long. One of the reasons or one of the ways that we manage our time is by being efficient as much as possible in communication. So we're going to make this short and sweet, so there should actually be plenty of time for some Q&A at the end of this. Is there anything, Kavya, that I've missed or that you would like to add from your perspective before we get started?
No, that sounds great to me.
All right. So we will start right out of the gate with a question, which I would love some answers to, and Daisy can help us know what the answers consist of, which is, if I gave you, not you, Kavya, you don't qualify, unfortunately, but if everybody else I gave just over $86,000 right now, what would you do with it? Daisy, I'm hoping for some creativity among these answers, so as soon as you get a couple, let us know what we get.
Okay. One says invest, the other one says donate.
Okay.
College savings and stocks.
Okay.
Save for college. I would use some of it. Mostly a lot of college and donate. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, their parents are near, without a doubt. Their parents are sitting right next to them, without a doubt. Okay. Now here's the catch. I'm going to give you the catch because I didn't give it to you earlier. You have to spend it all in one day or it's gone. You can't put it in the bank.
Okay.
All right. So you can see my 11-year-old who helped put these slides together is sitting here next to me. He's trying to figure out how he can get that $86,000.
Buy a car, spend it on myself.
Buy a car. Okay. So now we'll open the chat box or the Q&A again. Who can guess where I'm going with this if I specify $86,400 instead of $86,000?
I guess we are not allowed to answer, Dr. Balu.
No, you're not. You're an insider. That's, that's what some people are under investigation for right now.
So it's $1 a second. That's what they're saying.
Exactly. So that is the number of seconds in a day. So we are all given, we're not given $86,000 every day, but we are all, every one of us who is joining this webinar gets the same 86,400 seconds a day. And so when you hear someone saying, I don't have time, that person is given the opportunity for exactly the same time as you, and you are given the same opportunity for time as everybody else. So it's really a matter of managing it. It's really a matter of what you are in control of. No one can take that away from you. No one. So today, our focus is on our kids. We're going to try our very best to be real, which is one of the reasons that we have presenters of two different ages. We're going to have plenty of time, as I mentioned, for Q&A at the end and throughout in the chat box. So Daisy did mention among the handouts, there's just a Word document that lists some different books. For the adults on the call, I highly recommend The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, written decades ago by Stephen Covey. Stephen's son, he had a number of children, but one of his sons, Sean Covey, wrote a book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. It takes exactly the same habits, but puts it in a language that teens can understand. It's much more relevant to them. The original book talked a lot about professional growth and about relationships between husband and wife, among other things. And so this is translated in a way that is much more relevant to people who are particularly in high school or in college. The other two books, one is written by Rory Vaden, who wrote the book Take the Stairs. He has a wonderful background story, was raised by a single mom, and one of his stories, if you want to YouTube that, you want to Google that YouTube, is about how his mom found his stepdad. And as a 10-year-old, this guy actually helped his mother to find a stepdad. It's a remarkable story, and he's written his story of Take the Stairs. And he, in the book, including other things, quotes Patanjali. The last book is Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. He is a New York Times writer, and he won a Pulitzer Prize for this book, which is not theory. It is actually very much rooted in science. And much like Atul Gawande writes his books, Charles Duhigg has used quite a bit of neuroscience in his approach. So these are the three books that we recommend. The first two are very, very much teen-friendly. The last one is, I think for our teens, they'll be just fine with it, but it is a little bit more intense and certainly much more scientifically rooted. So the majority of what we're going to cover today is going to be rooted in the 7 habits. We had to come up with some sort of a backdrop or framework, and so this is what we are going with today. The other 2 books will serve as reinforcements to what we're teaching. So for those of you who don't know the 7 habits of highly effective people, these are those habits. You start by being proactive. You begin with the end in mind. Put first things first. In everything that you do, you think win, win. And you seek first to understand, then to be understood, synergize, and sharpen the saw. And we're going to take these apart, particularly the first 3, because that's really where a lot of the investment needs to be made for all of us. Once we do those, the rest of them actually start to come naturally. But if you read the book, you will find that the first 3 are when we are dependent on other people, that's where our focus has to be. And then as we start to do 4, 5, and 6, we become independent. And then towards the end, particularly 6 and 7, we become interdependent. So we are able to bring a number of folks who are independently successful together to really put together something great and build great teams that truly, when they're firing on all cylinders, can change the world. So let's jump right in. So let's say that, right, habit number 1 is be proactive. So let's say you've got to write a book report. I've got advice here with me. He and his brother have both had to read The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. One of them has had to write this book report. The other one will soon have to do it because he's going to wind up at the same middle school. And so you have some options, right? Option 1 is you read the book on the last possible night, and then you pull an all-nighter to write the paper. The second option is you read it with a week to spare. So we will make this interactive, and we will get feedback from you as to why number 2 might be better than number 1, or if you want to play devil's advocate and you want to say it's actually better to just wait, explain that to us as well. So we will pause and hear from you in the chat box.
So
Dr.
there are
Balu,
2 number 2s. There is one number 1.
It's Dr. Balu, what's the expectation? Is the expectation what they actually do in the real time, or they give an expected answer?
No. So I mean, let's actually hear the did someone explain number 1, or did they just type in the number 1?
Yeah, they do a number as well as some explanation. A lot of them are number 2, but
Okay.
number 1, few of them say number 1 because that is the most efficient way to do it.
All right, good. That's the most efficient way to do it. Don't waste time planning. Just jump right in and get it done all in one shot. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's hear some explanations to number 2. That's good. It's bold. I like it.
Explanations for 2 is you have more time to thoroughly think about what was read in the events in the book. So report will be more analysis instead of stuffing everything in one night and not knowing exactly what to write. And
okay.
And of course, normally kids do number 1. It's actually a better option. 2 is better option because you can get it done at once. But it's actually 1 because you can get it done once.
Got it.
Number 2 because it would be better to read it in a week spare view that the loads of other works. Number one, more force to do well.
Under pressure, you write better. I'm going to translate that. That's what that means. Okay, cool. So we'll go to the next slide, which helps frame. For example, right, if we were to do it with a week to spare, you might have time to just check some movie clips, and that might get your creative juices flowing before you write the paper. You might be able to look at references with analysis. And you might have time to chat with your sibling, for example, who may have read the book before you and get some suggestions and brainstorming. I suppose that some will argue that you will convince your sibling to stay up all night with you, that you can stay up all night looking at movie clips and also looking up references. But I think that, maybe I'll just ask Kavya, in your own experience, I don't know if you've tried both number 1 or 2, or if you were born ready and you jumped right into number 2 and never tried number 1.
I've done both, I have to be honest. Even through college, I've done both. It always turned out better with number 2, though, I have to say. And if my sister Vanya wanted me to stay up all night with her for brainstorming and suggestions, I don't think I would be that good of a sibling. So.
And that is spoken as a sibling of a very successful younger sister who's, what, 6 years younger than you are?
Yeah, 5.5, yeah.
Yeah, so in spite of your closeness, a shared all-nighter is not something that would be on your short list of fun things to do.
No, definitely not.
Outstanding. All right. So that's habit 1, right, is to be proactive. And so, you don't have to buy into it. I think a lot of people were honest by putting in number 1, which is great. Honesty is really important. But one of the charges we were given, right, was to share what works for us. That's really what Srivatal asked us to share. And so for us, right, having walked in these shoes for quite some time, we would choose number 2. And we have found, both of us, Kavya and I, have found that our outcomes are way better by being proactive, planning, and choosing option 2. So habit 2, begin with the end in mind. So let's look at some examples of what that might consider. So let's look at, you can respond to any of these possibilities. So imagine a bike ride where someone challenges you to ride 20 miles, a particular route, right, as fast as you possibly could, being safe, and of course with a helmet. Another option is a chess match, and then a third is baking a cake. So how might the phrase begin with the end in mind impact the timing of that bike ride, the outcome of that chess match, or the amount of time spent and the taste of the cake in addition to the presentation? So we'll pause and get some feedback there.
Okay. Somebody says it's a bike ride because you can set your goals and prepare and plan to reach them. And then chess match, you know exactly what you want to achieve and what you work the entire time to achieve that. When you bake a cake, you have to preheat oven before you start making a batter. So you are planning to do that. If you go for a 20-mile ride, you need to bring supplies with you, and you do not get dehydrated or other issues. You may want to weigh back on your ride. You can understand how much time is available and plan. If you already have set your goal towards, instead of focusing on perfecting the process, you're working towards a goal which is efficient and reasonable. It would give us a goal which we want to reach. To get a good workout, win chess match, bake good cakes. If you
Good.
in a bike race, your legs will be cramped. So yeah, they are all the three. They are talking about how they would do it.
Good.
Bike ride would become massive. Yeah, it can get painful.
Good. So preparing, right, making sure that you have supplies for the ride, looking at the map, right, and knowing what your route is going to look like. That will make a huge difference. Chess match, if you don't know what your opening move is, right, or you're not prepared for a variety of opening moves that the opponent is going to start with, right, you're going to basically be guessing the entire time. And certainly baking the cake, right, involves getting the supplies in advance, having them out ready to go, having all the pans, the various other utensils associated with it. And of course, if you don't preheat the oven, you're going to be behind the 8 ball. You will lose that time. So this is all, you have all the right answers, right? And we will demonstrate why that's relevant towards the end, right? But that's basically what beginning with the end in mind. So habit number 1 is be proactive as opposed to being reactive and waiting till the last minute. Habit 2 is whatever you do, begin with the end in mind, kind of know what the outcome is and then work backwards from that and plan. Okay, habit number 3. If there's nothing else you take from this talk, this might actually be the most important thing that you can take. And this is habit number 3 is put first things first. So what they do in the 7 Habits books is they plot everything that we do into this 4-quadrant matrix. Everything that we are asked to do, okay, falls into one of these boxes. Everything we do is either urgent or not urgent, and everything we are asked to do is either important or not important. So very simplistically looking at it, urgent and important, those are things that are crises or emergencies, okay? However, quadrant 2 is still important, but those are things that are not urgent. So if we go back to our book report question, the Tom Sawyer question, right? If you do it the second way and you're living in quadrant 2, right, it's important, but you don't have to do it urgently because you're doing it with a week to spare. It allows you to plan. If it's due tomorrow, that's an all-nighter. That's now a crisis. And so you're living in quadrant 1, urgent and important. Things that are urgent but not important are in quadrant 3. And of course, things that are not urgent and not important that you're engaging in, which sometimes you can do, right? Right here, they've listed them as time wasters. They're not necessarily time wasters. And sometimes that's cool. Sometimes wasting time is also good. We need some of that downtime. But that's not where we want to be spending most of our time. And that probably doesn't describe those folks who are on this webinar on a Sunday morning. So if we are to look at some of the things that we generally do, quadrant 1, urgent and important, that's when you've got an exam tomorrow that you're not prepared for, or a friend calls you and they're injured and they need help, or you're late for school, or you drive because you're older than 16 and your car breaks down. Those are things that are urgent and important. Or if you've got a project that's due, for example, for Boy Scouts and you didn't block out enough time earlier to do it. Quadrant 2, which is, as the book says, really where we want to live more and more of our lives if we want to control our time. These are things that we do for goal setting and planning. You've got an essay, like that book report that's due in a week. Things we do to invest in ourselves, like exercise or spending time, valuable time, on relationships that are worth it. Relaxation, actually dedicated relaxation that's part of our routine. That's all quadrant 2. Quadrant 3 is phone calls that I have to answer right now, even though you don't really have to answer it. Or other interruptions, things that require kind of, it's a small home, so really kind of small-mindedness, so things that are, other people's big problems, which are really small problems. Peer pressure. Peer pressure is often something that is urgent but not important. You got to do this right now. You got to do this for me. If you don't do this right now, you're not my friend. A lot of that is quadrant 3. And then quadrant 4 is too much television, constant texting, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, lots of computer games. We put Fortnite, for example, in the title of this talk. Those are all things that are really not urgent and certainly not important. So the more we live in quadrant 3 and 4, right, takes away from the important things. And the more that we live in quadrant 1 prevents us from things that we should do to invest in ourselves, including the people around us, relaxation, exercise, and goal setting. So if we say that playing Fortnite is in quadrant 3 or 4, which I'm not sure how you'd argue that it is in 1 or 2, it's going to likely cost you an opportunity later in quadrant 1, 2, or 3. As an example, and I teach a bunch of kids in the neighborhood. I teach them various old Indian texts. I teach them on Sundays. And I've had a number of them over the years not be prepared. And one of the biggest reasons is they were playing Fortnite all night on Friday and all day Saturday. So then they haven't done the reading on Sunday. So here are some of the things that will happen to them on Sunday. Their friend calls and says, hey, let's go out for ice cream, right? Which during a pandemic is a little bit harder to do. But until a few months ago, they call and you can't, because now you are stuck on Sunday having to be at home doing your homework because you spent all of Friday and Saturday in quadrant 3 or 4. Or your parents say, come on, let's go to our place of worship. Let's go to church. Let's go to synagogue. Let's go to the mosque. Let's go to the temple. And you can't, because you have to get caught up on all the work you didn't do on Friday and Saturday. And now your parents are disappointed with you, which for some people, maybe that's not a big deal, but I think most people on this call do not want their family members disappointed with them. That usually does not make for a particularly fun life. So that's habit 3. We've done be proactive, begin with the end in mind, think, and the third is put first things first. Habit 4 is think win-win. So we're not going to go into a lot of detail on this, but whatever you do with anyone else or for anyone else beyond your family really needs to be a win-win. There has to be something that is beneficial to them and beneficial to you. And if it's in your relationship with that person, always unidirectional, where you're doing stuff for them and they're not for you, or vice versa, you need to really rethink that relationship. You can lose a lot of your time in a unidirectional relationship that is not win-win, where you're supporting one another. Habit number 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. If all of your time is spent just projecting what's on your mind without pausing to understand what is the other person's expectation or the other person's perspective, you will find yourself exhausted and you will burn out very quickly. And that will impact everything that you're trying to do. What is the relevance? Obviously at home, that's one of the fastest ways for a teenager to really have a rough relationship with parents. That spills over to everything else that we do. Certainly it impacts relationship with friends, and then it definitely impacts relationships with deans, with counselors, with teachers. And if you are constantly defending your own position without seeing the other person's point of view, you will find yourself really kind of miserable. And that makes it difficult to be efficient in any way, shape, or form. You'll be exhausted all the time, and that it makes it harder. Everything will take longer when you're living in such a state. So seek first to understand, then to be understood. Just 2 more to go. Habit 6 is synergize. So Helen Keller, incredibly inspiring, said something that still holds true today. Alone, we can do so little. Together, we can do so much. Synergy is achieved when 2 or more people work together, and the root erg is in there. So 2 or more people working together to create a better solution than either could alone. So this is celebrating differences, being open-minded enough to work with somebody else, find teamwork, and find new and better ways to do things. And this is relevant whether it's science projects, whether it is somebody who works together to win a Nobel Prize. It could be simple as a project you're working on for English class or social science in school. So a big way that you can wind up maximizing your time is to find someone you can learn from and who can learn from you. They might be the same age as you. They might be a totally different generation or 2 generations away from you. But if you can find someone who makes you better and who you can make better, you will find yourself developing really good habits. And prime among them will include time management. The last of the 7 habits is to sharpen the saw. This is investing in yourself. This is making sure you don't burn out. So for your body, it means eating healthy. It means exercising. It means sleeping enough. I understand that there are things that will leave you in quadrant 1, so there will be times that you don't get that much sleep, but you've got to balance that out with enough rest and relaxation, often enough so that you don't get yourself completely tired and so that your body stays sharp. Your mind needs to stay sharp. This means reading. This means writing. This means educating other people. A lot of times you learn a lot having to teach someone else. This includes your heart, building relationships. This means laughing, loving. This means being vulnerable. And this means seva. This means giving to others through service, volunteering. The last, in addition to your body, mind, and heart, is investing in your soul. This might mean keeping a journal. This might mean prayer. This might mean meditation. Some introspection is needed. If you do that, you will find that you will certainly get a lot more of your time back because you're taking the time to recharge and refuel. Body, mind, heart, and soul. All of those are components of habit number 7, sharpening the saw. So we went through the 7 habits. Be proactive, begin with the end in mind, put first things first, think win-win, seek first to understand, then to be understood, synergize, and sharpen the saw. So now, did you just receive a book report, or did you receive true pearls on time management? Let's say you don't want that book. Let's say you don't buy into that book. Let's say you think that book is nonsense. When you look at Take the Stairs, what Rory Vaden has written, his 7 tenets in the book are around sacrifice, commitment, focus, integrity, scheduling, faith, and action. And if you look at those, a bunch of those match right up with habit 1, 2, and 3, habit 4, 5, and 6, and habit 7. And if you look at the power of habit, again, you will find a number of those tenets, including he talks about something, and again, this is scientifically rooted, about keystone habits. So there are certain things that if you do consistently impact everything else. So an example of a keystone habit might be exercise. An example of a keystone habit might be waking up early. If you wake up early, as an example, you control your day. And it will give you time before you have to go to work or go to school, to perhaps go for a walk or do yoga. It might give you a chance to get a meal. And then you can get to work or school often before everybody else. And suddenly you've gotten more done. You can finish your tasks before you even have your first class. Some things you will have done by 8:30 more than a bunch of people you know will get done by 12:30. So they describe these keystone habits. It could mean exercise. It could mean yoga. There are a bunch of things that if you just do consistently every day or the same 3 times a week, whatever it is, there are certain keystone habits, not unlike brushing your teeth. I don't think anyone here would fathom not brushing your teeth at least 2 times a day. That's a keystone habit. That's basic, or you will find all your teeth rotting, which will give you a whole bunch of other health issues. This is not unlike that. There are keystone habits that impact everything else that we do, and certainly the time that we have out of those 86,000 seconds per day. So I will pass it on to Kavya, who will take us to the rest of the presentation.
All right, can everyone hear me? Okay, so now that we talked about all of these, these 7 key habits, what are some ways, like some tips and tricks that we can actually start incorporating this into our life, right? So what are things that, when this webinar ends, you can say, okay, I'm going to start applying some of these techniques into my life, start time managing right now. So let's take a look. Can we go to the next slide? Sorry. Okay, so some tips for scheduling. So scheduling sounds, like you have a calendar, you can divide up all your to-do, your task list. That's easy, but there's some ways that we can make this kind of a smarter technique for you. So you can, what are some best ways to map out your schedule, right? So the first thing to do is map out the week by categorizing the different tasks that you have to do. So we saw the 4 quadrants on the put things first slide. So kind of taking that and applying it to something you can actually do. So looking at your tasks, you want to ask yourself these 3 different questions. So first, what needs to get done, right? What's immediate? What has deadlines? Like, what do you have to get done this week without, being stressed out or ending up doing things last minute? So these might be things that have deadlines that you have to get done by a certain date. So you want to map those tasks out first. Once you map out these tasks, then you can ask yourself, what would you like to get done? So, sorry, did my audio go out? Can you still hear me?
Yeah, it keeps going in and out, but you're okay now.
Okay, sorry about that.
No.
I think my internet connection might be a little iffy. Okay, so second, you want to ask yourself, what would you like to get done? So these are tasks that maybe they don't have a deadline, but they're tasks that you want to do within your week. So maybe you want to practice basketball for 2 hours per week. So this is something, you want to work on your basketball skills, but it doesn't have a deadline. So it doesn't matter which days you need to practice basketball. Or maybe it's, you want to practice piano 3 times a week, but it doesn't matter which days you choose to practice. So these are things you can schedule in second. So you know which days you might have more time than others based on the tasks that require deadlines. And then lastly, you can ask yourself, what do you want to do? So of course, you shouldn't get rid of things that you do for fun, whether that's Instagram, watching TV, playing Fortnite. Of course, you want to enjoy these things, but these are things that you can kind of map into your schedule last. So then you know how much time you can afford to spend on this. Because if you map out your Fortnite first, like we talked about earlier in the presentation, you're going to miss out on other things that are more immediate, and then you end up stressing and doing those last minute. So this is just kind of a technique to the way you should map things out to make sure that you're optimizing your time. The second one, this one I'm a big fan of, so break big tasks into smaller ones. So what does that mean? So maybe on your to-do list, you have write your English report. And that's a big task, right? Sometimes you look at that and you're like, oh my gosh, where do I start? You have to read the book, you have to do your research, maybe watch those movie clips, ask your siblings some questions, and then finally sit down to write the report. So there's a lot of different steps to the end product. So sometimes it helps to, write out those small steps. So maybe your first task on the list might be finish the last 2 chapters of the book. And then you can have as your next task, like organize your notes. And then start with write the thesis statement, then write the introductory paragraph. That way you kind of can see all of the little steps. And then when you finish one step, it feels like you've accomplished something. So it's not this one big daunting task that's going to take you maybe 6 hours to complete, but you have these little tasks and you're like, okay, look at this progress that I'm making. And it feels really good. It's something that I do all the time. I break down all my little tasks and I get a lot of satisfaction from, crossing it off the list and knowing that I've accomplished something. And then the last one. So this one sounds maybe a little odd, but we'll talk about it. So time yourself on different tasks so you have an idea of how long they take to complete. So sometimes we might, be overeager and think I can do all these tasks on Sunday. So I'm going to enjoy Friday, enjoy Saturday, and then I have all these lists of things to do. I can definitely get it done Sunday. And you don't think twice about it. Sunday comes around, it's 8 p.m. and you've only done half the things that you thought you could do. That happens to all of us. It's happened to me. But a way to get around that is to kind of have a better idea of how long each task takes. So, if it usually takes you like 4 hours to write a paper, you have that in mind when you're thinking about your Sunday. So you're not having 6 different tasks that take 4 hours, right? So this can be like little things like reading. So if it takes you, an hour to read 20 pages, you know that, and you're not thinking you can read this 50-page chapter in 1 hour. So that's just a little tip for that. And then next, I thought it can be your friend in this. Obviously, there are all the distractors like Instagram and TikTok, but there are some ways that you could use your phone or your computer or different apps to help you with time management. So, something that everyone has on their phone or their computer is calendar alerts. You can easily set this up, or reminders or task lists that just pop up on your phone. This is just a way that maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't, but you can try it out. And it gives you a great reminder of things when you have to get it done. And then app ideas. There are so many different apps out there. You can definitely do your research, look at different ways apps can help you time manage. Some apps that I personally like. So I don't know if any of you have heard of the Pomodoro technique. I'd be interested to see if anyone actually uses that. Feel free to chat if that's something that you do currently use. But what it is, it's a technique that basically you sit down, you set a timer for 25 minutes. For those 25 minutes, you're going to sit at your desk, you're going to focus on the task at hand. Then the timer goes off. It means it's a break time. So you stop what you're doing, you have 5, 10, 15, whatever you want your break time to be. You have those 5 minutes to just not work, do whatever you want. So maybe that's go on Facebook, go down to the kitchen and have a snack, talk to your sibling. You're not working during those 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And then the timer goes off again and you know it's back to work. And so this way it helps you break up the time. So you're definitely getting your breaks, but you're also having that amount of time where you have to focus. So that's a technique you can try out. And there's an image that's going to pop up on the slide that kind of shows you an app that you can use. So this one is called Focus Keeper Time Management. I've used this one. You can set the amount of time, as you can see, that you want to focus, and then you can set the amount of time that you want to take a break for and adjust it to whatever fits your schedule the best. Another app idea is screen time control. So maybe you're someone who has a hard time getting off of Instagram or Facebook on your phone or getting off your texting. There's an app that can help you lock you out of all those apps so you don't get distracted. And then background noise apps, I included that one. I know it's one that I've been using a lot, especially since coming home for quarantine. It's hard to, I need silence to work, and it's hard to always have that. Especially, it's a lot to ask when you're at home. So I put on headphones and I listen to the sound of ocean waves or thunder, and it helps, drown out the noise instead of just listening to white noise. Helps me focus a little better. So I thought maybe I'd suggest that. You guys can try it out. And when you're more focused on your work, you use the time more efficiently. So, and feel free to throw out any ideas in the chat of apps that you might use or apps that work for you to help time manage. So on our next slide, we just have some final pearls for you. So I know this is a lot of information. We've been talking at you for a while, but just keep these things in mind as you try to start incorporating some of these techniques. So one, take breaks. Breaks are very important. Like we talked about with the Pomodoro technique, you can have the time where you focus and you need those breaks so you can distract yourself for a few minutes, 5, 10 minutes, whatever it takes. So then when you come back to sit down, you're more focused. Another one, unplug, log off, mute, power down, whatever you need to do so your phone's not a distraction, your email's not a distraction. Try to set yourself up for the best. Keep an organized desk. This one is important. So say you're gonna come and study for an hour. You come to your desk and then 5 minutes later you realize, I don't have my highlighters. Then you get up, hunt around your room for your highlighters. You sit back down, 5 minutes later you realize, I don't have a pen, like it ran out of ink. So then you're going searching for a working pen. So then you've lost about 10 minutes out of your hour already just searching for those things that you need. So if you have those things organized beforehand, you don't get distracted while you're working to get up and look for things. So have everything at hand and organized. And lastly, settle into a routine. Like we talked about earlier with the keystone habits, waking up early, whether or not it's that, when you start incorporating some of these tips and tricks into your life, it's hard at first because it's something new and you're gonna have to work at it and it takes some getting used to. But then slowly over the next few weeks, you're gonna settle into routine, and that is gonna help you with your time management. Again, so this was a lot, but maybe you thought maybe some of these tips are too simple. They're not, big life-changing methods. But remember, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. What does this mean? Do you guys know what this quote means? I don't know if anyone's responded in the chat with their ideas.
Is to work hard. What I think is to work hard. Hard work is genius. 99% is working.
Absolutely, it means to work hard.
Yeah.
It takes hard work. It's not about you know, being a genius or anything. Success takes hard work. So when you have a goal, you have to work towards it. And it's not just working hard, but you also have to work smart. You know, we all, again, have the same amount of time. It's how you're going to use that time to work. We could go to our next slide. All right, so again, to really drill this point home, the more you want to achieve something and the harder that something is, the more you have to commit to these principles. And our guarantee for you, and it's our guarantee, if you commit to these habits and you practice, you will control your schedule more than your time getting away from you. And again, like we mentioned, it's going to be hard to start incorporating these things into your life, but it's really helpful in the long run. And once it becomes habit and a routine for you, you'll have a better grasp on your time. And to kind of take a step back, maybe some of you are thinking, you know, I'm still a kid, like I have a lot of time before, you know, I'm a working adult, before, you know, time management is something that is really going to affect my life. But let me give you a couple of reasons of why that's not true and why we think it's important for you as young kids to start applying these principles in your life. So one, if you look at Dr. Balu and I, both of our families have had our own journeys with the National Spelling Bee. So Dr. Balu in 1985, me in 2009, my sister Vanya in 2015, and Dr. Balu's son Othman in 2019. And we would not have been able to, you know, have these journeys if we didn't put in a lot of hard work when we were younger, when we were teenagers. And a lot of that hard work came from being able to manage our time and prioritize how we wanted to spend our time as kids. And to also drill that point home of why it's important now, I'm grateful that I started using those techniques as a kid. So 1992 and 2017 are the years that Dr. Balu and I started medical school. So I'm still in medical school right now, and I can definitely say, you know, time management is huge. If I didn't manage my time well, I'd be behind all the time. And if I hadn't started using these habits as kids, this first year of medical school would have been very, very daunting. I wouldn't have known how to schedule everything. So starting early and making those practices like part of your routine is going to help you later on when you have to start adapting and incorporating more and more into your schedule. And so again, we go back to the point, we all have the same number of seconds in a day. We all have the same amount of time. So it's how we use that time. How we use that time, think of it as money. How we use that money or time is going to be the big difference in helping you be successful in any of your pursuits, whether it's academics, whether it's your basketball practice, your violin practice, anything. Use these techniques to help you, and then you'll have more free time as well to play Fortnite, watch TV. Dr. Balu, do you want to add anything here, the final, as we drill this final point?
No, I think we've made it, and so we are prepared to respond to any questions that Daisy might be giving us on behalf of the group.
Okay, thank you, both of you. It was really a wonderful time we had. I have a few questions already asked, and I'll just start with that. The first one is, so when should you do what would you like to get done things? At the end, after all the what needs to be done things?
That's a
yeah,
caveat
so
question.
the idea is once you finish, you know, mapping out all the what needs to be done, then you can go on to what would you like to be done. So first, map out everything that has a deadline. You know what date it has to be done by. So then you schedule all of those. Then you can schedule what you like to get done. And then lastly, you can start allocating time for all of the fun things. Or, I mean, studying and practicing basketball is fun too. I didn't mean to phrase it that way, but you know, your more recreational hobbies.
But as you get into this more and more, right, you can start adjusting things. So for example, you know, if any of you were, for example, to live in Chicago, the number of nice days is incredibly unpredictable in March and April and May. So right now it happens to be raining. Yesterday it was beautiful, right? So because I was largely done with my part for this talk, and because Kavya and I had a good plan for this, I didn't have to be stuck inside yesterday when it was beautiful. I got to literally go for a 26-mile bike ride yesterday with my family. Had I not planned it and had we not been done, I would have been stuck indoors on a nice day. And then today, as soon as this talk is over, I wouldn't be able to go out because it's currently raining. So in the beginning, right, we save the recreational things after the other things are done. But once you get into these habits, you'll be able to adjust because you'll be living so much in quadrant 2 that you'll have plenty of time for things that are quadrant 1 and quadrant 3.
Thank you, Dr. Balu. The next one is, how do you find someone you improve or who improves you? It seems like they are helping you, but they may already be better than you. So is there a way to
Yeah, so the best way to live life, if possible, is to recognize that everybody has something to offer. So you can take, for example, a grandparent. A grandparent has a lot of wisdom, but they really won't necessarily know technology unless they're incredibly progressive. That's someone you can learn a lot about life, right? They can teach you quite a bit about life. You can teach them about technology. You can teach them about FaceTime. You can probably teach them how to make Google Slides or use something like Google Docs, right? Or you can teach them how to use Zoom as an example to be in touch with the family, especially at a time like this. You can see that my 11-year-old son, Advait, is next to me, right? He is progressively good at soccer, and he's now better than me at soccer. My son Atman is now at the point where his spelling knowledge is incredible, and he's beyond me when it comes to spelling. And yet I have a lot that I can teach them, and yet we are many, many years apart. Same thing should hold true for peers. You may know something about music that they don't. They may know something about sports that you don't. You may be good at math. They may be good at English. If you look hard enough, you will find that there is something that you can offer that you're really good at, and similarly that they can offer. And that is the sort of person where you can synergize, because you each bring something to the table, and what you get is synergy, but also it's a win-win relationship.
Thank you. The next is for Kavya. While growing up, what did you do for fun? Did you talk to friends or hang out with them?
Yeah, of course. It's always, I had a group of friends. We did different things. We used to go ice skating, watch movies, have sleepovers. I also played the violin, which for me was very kind of a relaxing hobby. What else did I do? It's been a while to think about 8th grade and high school. But I went on bike rides a lot, actually. I used to love going on like our neighborhood trails for 30 minutes, an hour. It was a way to get good fresh air. I also did Bharatanatyam. Those were kind of my main hobbies and recreational activities that I did.
The next question is how to deal with the peer pressure.
All right, Kavya, you want to go first?
Sure. So I know there's a lot of different ways. Peer pressure can be hard, especially when your friends have certain interests or different interests than you, and you feel that, you need to kind of give in to them, and that's very difficult. And especially when you're younger, you do feel that pressure. I think the best thing to think about is, again, remember what's important to you. And maybe your friends are important to you, but try to find ways to do things with your friends that maybe that they want to do, but also that you're interested in. Again, it's a little difficult. I'm not sure exactly what kind of peer pressure we're talking about here, but it's also, you should always bring up things to your friends that are important to you. So maybe, you've spent an hour making TikTok videos with your friends, and they want to keep doing it and you feel pressure to give in, but maybe you can talk with your friends about, how about we do, this different activity instead? Or maybe you can say, I really have to get this schoolwork done. Why don't we both study together? There are different ways to kind of be honest with your friends and kind of redirect them, to make sure that you can focus on what's important to you or what you need to get done as well. I don't know if that's a good answer, but
And again, it really fits with habit number 4. So if it's all one direction, if the peer pressure you're getting is from someone or a group of someone's where you're doing everything their way and they're not interested in the things that you are, and you're not directing at least some of what happens in the group or what that person does with you and for you, that's not a win-win relationship. That is a one-direction relationship, which, you can do better than that, I promise.
Thank you. This one is for both of you. When you are preparing and studying for spelling bee, how did you manage your time or keep your time?
Sure. So one of the big things that we talked about that I used to do was I used to map out my schedule for the week. And again, that's something that might change later on in the week, but at the beginning of the week, thinking, on Monday I have dance class, so I'm not going to be able to study as much, and knowing that ahead of time. But, Tuesday I don't have dance or violin, that's a good day for me to, put in a solid few hours. And knowing ahead of time, like what my schedule looks like is really helpful. And then I can assign different tasks to different days. And even if I fell behind, maybe I would have Saturday afternoon for all my catch up, as like a catch up time. So I can go back and whatever I missed, it's not as stressful. I can just sit there and go through those. Having that sense of knowing your schedule ahead of time was really huge. And also knowing not to push it. So knowing that, I do need this break every day. At least once a day, I'm going to do something recreational, like go ride my bike for 45 minutes. That's really helpful, because then when I sit back to work, I can be more efficient. So I'm not spending 2 hours, stuck trying to push myself through something that would have taken 30 minutes. But because I'm coming in with, a fresher mind, I can get that task done more efficiently.
One thing that I would add is, for me, getting up early has always been important. And so, you can decide what that means for you. But getting up early really allowed me somewhere between 1 and 2 hours in the morning with no interruptions and nobody bothering me. Nobody's texting you at 5 o'clock in the morning. So, at that time the texting was not relevant, but it was a time that I was sharp, and it was a time that I had total control of my schedule, and that was an incredibly efficient hour or two for me, and just made me feel good. It really made me feel strong and confident, because I had gotten a bunch of stuff done before I ever set foot outside the house.
Thank you. When you start talking about scheduling, where do we really start? Should we start from setting at the wake-up time? And what are the habits can we start with? Anyone?
Waking up is good. I think when you wake up is good. things that you can't change, right? So if mealtime is specific in your house, right, you have to plot that out. If you're dependent on other people for your schedule, so if you're getting, you know, rides from a family, or if you're studying something and that requires quizzing by family members, right, you have to plot those things, school hours, whatever it is, right, that you can't change. You plot those first, and then you put in your wake up time, and then you build everything else around it. Those are some of the anchor things that you cannot change. And then you can work from there. Kavya?
Yeah, no, exactly. I second that. So obviously the big blocks of time, like waking up, school, your meals, and then with the time that you have around those, starting again with, you know, what tasks do I have to get done today? Where can those fit in my day? And then where can I schedule like my breaks and my free time? So kind of going in that order of priority is really helpful.
The next one is really an interesting one. Kavya, you talked about Pomodoro method, but instead of 25 minutes of work and 5 minutes of break, I am taking 25 minutes of break and 5 minutes of work. How should I motivate myself to do the work instead of taking too many breaks?
I mean, you know, that's still a good start because hopefully that 5 minutes that you're putting in is, you know, that's your 5 minutes of work. Why don't you start slowly increasing that time? So now that you're doing 5 minutes of work, 25-minute break, why don't you start doing 10 minutes of work and 20 minutes of break and see how that feels? And then slowly you can, you know, make this more even or increase your work time and decrease your break time. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But as you get comfortable with that, just slowly increase your work time.
A wonderful answer.
Yeah, and much needed. Do you have any practical suggestion to change deep ingrained habits over the lot of years, which you have gotten used to allowing distractions to take over?
I think that any change is hard, especially if you're talking about a habit that you've ingrained over the past few years. But as with change, you really have to push through with the first few days or the first couple of weeks that you start trying to introduce a new method. So maybe you've been waking up late all your life, and now you decide, you know, I'm inspired. I want to wake up early starting this week and see how that can change. The first few, you know, mornings, I'm sure, are going to be very difficult. You're not going to be happy. You know, you're not used to waking up early. But try to give yourself a certain time. Say, I'm going to do this for 5 days straight, no matter what, even as unhappy as I am. And then after 5 days, maybe you can think, you know, this isn't for me. I don't think. Maybe after 5 days, you think, oh, actually, I started getting used to this. This is great. Like, maybe I'll start with waking up 1 hour earlier, and maybe in a week or two I can wake up 2 hours earlier. So give yourself that chance to adjust, even if you don't like it at first.
I have a relevant question here. I was waiting for this. So what is that one tough habit that you have developed, Kavya?
That I've done? Let's think. A lot of these definitely apply to me. I have to keep reteaching myself a lot of these techniques every day. I think something that I tend to do a lot is overschedule myself. I think a lot of the times I think, you know, I can get these 10 tasks done in a day. And that's most definitely not the case. Like, I'll be, you know, it'll be dinner time and I'm thinking how I've only done, you know, half the tasks. So I've had to actually time myself. As weird as it felt, I have timed myself doing tasks and try to figure out what is more realistic for me to accomplish. And I mean, I can even show you some of the ways that I keep track. I literally write down my tasks on little Post-it notes, and I only write down what I think I can actually accomplish in the day that's realistic. So at most now, I hopefully only fall behind maybe one task a day. I try.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is, how do focus and hard work tie with the time management?
So this is partly related to the keystone habits I talked about, right? So being focused, right, allows you to get more done in a given period of time, right? So, if you're behind and you're always under pressure, it feels like you'll be efficient, but it's actually, for most people, much harder to get things done. So if you get up early and you're sharp at that time and there are no interruptions, you might get done in 1 hour what might take you 3 hours later on. And if in general you are in good mental health, right, you'll be a lot more efficient. So for me, that includes waking up early. That includes meditation. That includes diet. Last year, I started intermittent fasting. So that was 16 hours of fasting every day. It took me a little while to get there, but now I've been doing it for 14 and a half months. That actually keeps me a lot sharper. Part of it is, through that process, you wind up actually eating less, especially eating less junk food that you don't even realize. And it also gives you time. That's one less meal. And again, I'm not suggesting that for everybody, but for me, that's actually worked out really well. And the biggest reason it's worked out is I'm winding up healthier through the process. And so there are a number of things that you can do, these keystone habits, that if exercise, I now, especially through the pandemic, I'm actually exercising more because I don't have to drive anywhere. And so redirecting energy to those things that help you maintain focus. For some people, it's meditation. For some, it's prayer. For some, it's exercise. For some, it is sleep hygiene. For some, it is diet. For some, it can be all of those things. And in doing so, your mind is much sharper. And when your mind is sharper, then the things that used to take you 15 minutes will take you 10. The things that used to take you 60 minutes will take 45. And what you suddenly find is you're getting back 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes each day because of all those 5 and 10 and 15-minute increments that are being bought back for you with that focus.
Thank you both. The next question to both of you is, what motivation in life you had to be successful? Did it come from yourself, your competition, or your siblings, or your parents? And how do you really picture yourself that successful in life?
I think that the best.
You want to go first?
Sure. I think that the best motivation is, and the motivation that works the best, I'll say, is the one that comes from you. My dad always had this saying that he used to tell us, you can always drag a horse to the water, but you can't make the horse drink. So, you can always feel pressure to do things, whether it's your friends are doing it, your parents want you to do it, your sibling, you're competing with your sibling, whatever it is. It can lead you to something, and that's never, a bad thing to start something new because it's been suggested to you. But to be successful in it, you have to really think about why you're doing it. And if you're doing it for yourself, that's the best, way to feel happy about what you're doing and to feel, like this is something I enjoy doing and passionate about. Of course, even with things that you're passionate about, it can get hard to put in the hours sometimes, and you're going to need those external motivators to remind you of what you're doing, but I think in the end, if it's not something you enjoy doing, or if you don't think I'm doing this because I want to be better at XYZ, I'm doing this because I think it'll give me great life skills later in life, those are great things to remind yourself to keep going forward.
So this is partly where think win-win really comes into play. There are most things really that should, the motivation should come from you. But there are some things where we need a reminder. And so, as time goes on and you've got a lot of responsibilities, you're going to feel like, well, I want to do this and I don't want to do this. But they're still your responsibility. I have responsibilities as a parent. I have responsibilities as a son. My parents are in their 70s. I have responsibilities as a spouse. And believe me, I get lots of very important reminders from all of them as to some things that I might be slipping on. So the best motivation is absolutely from yourself, but the more things you do and the more meaningful things you do, it's pretty easy to get off balance. And so surrounding yourself with people that you respect and who respect you is good, because they will be honest with you. And this is also, so that's think win-win, but also seek first to understand, then to be understood. Because if every time someone reminds you of something where you might be off track, you blow up at them because you did not seek first to understand, they're going to quit reminding you, and you're going to then lose the win-win opportunities, and you're going to lose the synergize opportunities because you didn't follow habit number 5.
Thank you. Dr. Balu, can you talk a little bit about motivating the kids? Is the motivation comes naturally, or it's acquired?
So I think you can see my 11-year-old is here with me. Motivation is really, it's a two-way street. If all the motivation is unidirectional and all you're doing is telling the kids what to do, they'll do it, right? But it's not going to be as fun. We have a bunch of rules here. We have a bunch of things that we do together. There's family time, and family time is sometimes prayer, sometimes it's Indian music, but sometimes it's soccer. We'll go as a family and play soccer. We'll go as a family. We have season tickets to the Chicago Cubs, which isn't relevant in 2020, but some of the most meaningful time that we have spent together is going to Cubs games together over quite some time. And so it has to be a balance, and the things that are important to each member of the family has to be important to all of us. So if the boy's mom, if my wife wants to do something, right, she may want to go to an Indian classical music concert. That's not something I'm very excited about, but if that's important to the family, then that's something that I'm going to do. If going for a bike ride is something important to me, right, the family comes together and does that. If the kids, want to do an obstacle course that they've put together, then my wife and I will do it with them and for them. We generally would not do that on our own, but it's important to the kids, so we do it. And so when that is the atmosphere at home, with that backdrop or in that context, if we then tell them to practice piano, it's not the sort of fight as opposed to if everything we do is a unidirectional, the parents telling the kids what to do, then it's much more of a fight in that situation where it's just a, parent to kid, parent to kid, parent to kid. Try your best to get out of your own comfort zone and do the things that the kids would like you to do. When they were little, it was on the iPad playing Fruit Ninja. And we giggled so much when they were little doing that, because they when I would come home, the kids would have Fruit Ninja ready for me to play. And, it's not something that obviously I would have necessarily originally signed up to do, but they thought it was great. And eventually my wife and I were then competing with each other to get the highest score in Fruit Ninja. And what it did was bring us together as a family, because the things that were important to the kids at that time were respected as important to us. And that then really set the table for each of us contributing to defining what's important, and each of us then respecting it and following the same.
Thank you. We have 5 more minutes to go. I'm a 5th grade student and interested in so many academic and extracurricular activities at the same time. Also, whatever I do I do like to master it. So I get confused in picking these activities. How do I manage that?
Abia, you want to go first?
Sure. That's a tough one, and I've definitely been in your shoes before. When I was younger, I did a few different activities. At one point, I think I was ice skating, dancing, playing soccer, and playing the violin. And that's when I also wanted to start doing spelling. So obviously, that was a lot of things that I, realized that I couldn't do if I wanted to master something or try to spend a lot of time on one thing, it would really cut down on the time that I could spend on all the others. So I had to make the unfortunate decision of cutting out, I think at the time, ice skating and soccer from my schedule, and ended up kind of with my core activities. So I think there is an element of trying to prioritize what you want to do. You might have a lot of different interests, but think about maybe the one or two things that you think, these are the two activities I want to get really good at. And this is where I'm going to map out, most of my time. And then of course, there's nothing stopping you from, dabbling in all the other activities, but you have to understand that you might not be able to spend as much time on, activity 3 and 4 if you want to get really good at activities 1 and 2. Those are just my 2 cents.
Dr. Balu,
one of the places to begin. Sorry, I can finish that one and then I'll answer your next one. I think one of the things, right, is first evaluating, as Kavya says, right, all the things that you're doing, right? How much more can you do quadrant 1 and 2, right? And is there anything you can delete in 3 and 4? And then once you've done that, then if you still find that you're kind of over-programmed, you've signed up for too much, then habit 5 has to kick in. You need to calmly go to your parents and say, I'm having trouble keeping up with all of these things. I don't think I can do all of them well. I need to chat this through. And you have to be prepared, right, that it might not be a conversation that goes well right out of the gate because you may be perceived as giving up too easily. But if you remain calm about it, then you can potentially try some ways to juggle all of it. But if you can't, at least you've had an intentional conversation, and then you can start evaluating what are some of those things that need to go away. The best among our kids and the best among our parents are generally pushing the limits of all the things that they can do. And so after habit 1 and after habit 2 and after habit 3 have been mastered, in a case like this, right, then we have to decide, okay, what's going to go? But that often is better if it's a respected or respectful family conversation, and then you can figure out what makes sense to cut back on, what makes sense to delete.
Thank you. There is a question from Facebook Live on the web. Can these techniques be applied to help reduce the stress?
In my life, the answer is a resounding yes.
For me as well,
Yeah.
Absolutely on that. When kind of have a better idea that you're not pushing your deadlines, or that you have this free time set aside comfortably, it's a huge stress reducer.
Sorry, and I'll end with the last question. How much of scheduling you were mentioning about mapping the weekly help from what you got your parents compared to what you did it yourself when you were preparing for the competitions?
So for me, the year I won, the scheduling was largely from myself. I was in the National Spelling Bee 3 times, and the first 2 years I was very passive, and I did it whatever my parents directed me to do. The final year when I won, I was pushing them. I was in control of my schedule. I was the motivated one, and they, of course, they were guiding me. I was 13 years old, but that push, that organization, all that was coming largely from me, and it made all the difference in the world.
I completely agree with that, and I have to say too, like even since my spelling bee days, like I have been working on how I schedule things. I change the way I do it. I've been getting better at it in medical school for sure. Even like the past few months, I've had to rethink how I schedule things, being in quarantine. So it's a lot of effort to put in, but it pays off for sure, and you get better and better at it as you keep doing it.
Casey, I think Srivital was asking me a question. I'm not sure he got a chance to ask it, so I just want to make sure that we don't miss that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Srivital.
Thanks, Dr. Balu. Maybe that would be the last question. So how important it is to do multiple things? We know we have the prioritize and we apply the quadrant, but I think it's also important to develop the habit of multitasking. So how important it is?
So there's multitasking and there are multiple things, right? If you're doing so many things that every time you're doing something, you're multitasking, that's not good, right? So you need, and Kavya, as a third-year medical student who's taking care of patients, and myself as a practicing physician, by definition, we have to multitask, right? We will be given, a nurse will come to us, something will come by email, a text will come from another doctor, 3 different patients for whom we are responsible will be coming at us at once. So by definition, we have to be able to multitask. However, so that's the kind of the professional answer. Being able to do multiple things is important. If I was trying to be a decent doctor and I wasn't, as a simple example, exercising and I wasn't meditating, I wouldn't be doing much good for my patients and their families. I would not be living by example, and I wouldn't be able to manage the stress. On the other hand, if I am multitasking and I'm going to give a silly example. If I'm in front of a patient and I'm texting another patient while I'm in front of that patient because I'm not present, I'm not going to do much good. And a constant reminder I have from my family, right, is when I'm present with them, I need to be present with them. And that's something that all of us are constantly dealing with, right? Because now that we have these electronic devices, we're constantly getting inputs, right, which can take away from those that are with us physically. So the answer is yes, we need multiple things. The answer is yes, we need to be able to multitask, but like anything else in life, there is a healthy balance, and we need to constantly be checking ourselves to see where we are on that spectrum of balance and make sure we're not way off balance.
This is Ratnam. Can I add a comment on that? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
Carry
you.
on, sir.
Okay. On the multitasking, I'm listening to DVDs by a professor in neuroscience, and it's called Optimizing Your Brain for Fitness. And he said multitasking, yeah, it's a different dimensions. In general, he said multitasking is not a good idea. Just like a computer, your brain works one thing at a time. It cannot work multiple things. And what he said was, you can at different times, yeah, at different times you can do multitasking. 1 minute here, 1 minute there, 1 there. If you're efficient, productive, you can do that. But multitasking at the same time is not a good idea unless they're going through your brain to different channels. In the same channel, never try to do multitasking at the same time. It's useless. But if they're different, so you need to distinguish multitasking at multiple times, multitasking at the same time. That distinction is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chituri. And this is definitely a last question. This is on behalf of the parents, that how do I reduce the screen time for the kids, and how do I balance between the schoolwork and playing games without annoying or irritating them? Can I go ahead?
The most successful parent has to be annoying and has to be irritating, and the best kid has to be annoying and has to be irritating. If you're not annoying each other and irritating each other at least a little bit, you're not communicating enough. The real question is, what are you doing with each other that isn't annoying and isn't irritating? Like any other relationship, you have to invest in each other, and you have to have enough fun that you give each other credit when you're being annoying or when you're being irritating. That's something that as a family you have to develop. And it will create and foster mutual respect. If it's a mutually respectful relationship, then you'll be able to have those honest conversations. But you have to open the door for them to be a bi-directional relationship. You come from a ridiculously successful family, so you have to answer as well.
Yes.
I don't know if I have much more to add to that. But I feel like, I mean, at this point, I